The devolution dilemma: did 47 counties break Kenya's economy? Section 1, the sequel. In our last analysis, we looked at how the National Treasury quietly swallowed the Ministry of Economic Planning, transforming our national government from an economic architect into an aggressive tax collector. But that is only half the story. When Kenyans voted for the 2010 constitution, the grand promise was that we would no longer depend solely on Nairobi for development. The economic engine of the state was decentralized. Wealth creation was supposed to be pushed out of the high-rise offices of the Treasury and distributed directly into 47 local economic hubs. 16 years later, we must ask the difficult, uncomfortable question: has decentralized economic planning actually delivered local prosperity, or has it fragmented our national economy into 47 uncoordinated pieces? To understand why local economies feel choked despite trillions of shillings being sent to the grassroots, we have to look at the structural breakdown of devolved economic planning, and face a hard truth about the sheer size of our government architecture. Section 2, the promise versus the reality of the C.I.D.P. On paper, the 2010 Constitution designed a beautiful framework for subnational growth. Under the County Governments Act, every single county is legally mandated to develop a 5-year County Integrated Development Plan, or C.I.D.P. Legally, the C.I.D.P. is supposed to be the absolute gatekeeper of local development. No county assembly is allowed to allocate a single shilling of public funds to a project unless it is explicitly written into this economic master plan. The philosophy was brilliant: let local communities use public participation to dictate their own economic priorities, whether that means building cold storage facilities in agricultural zones or processing plants in industrial hubs. But in practice, the severe institutional gap emerged. Just as the National Treasury sidelined economic planners in favor of political megaprojects, county governors and their executives have largely neutralized local planning units. Instead of treating the C.I.D.P. as a rigid, econometric blueprint, it is frequently used as a glorified rubber stamp for political manifestos. Technical planning units at the county level are routinely starved of data and funding. The result: counties regularly launch trophy projects designed for the next election cycle, completely ignoring whether the local market has the cash flow to sustain them. Section 3, the fragmentation trap and the subnational debt. This lack of disciplined planning has triggered an economic crisis at the grassroots level, characterized by two major failure points. First is the county pending bills crisis. Because county planning units lack the authority to enforce fiscal discipline, county executives routinely overcommit to capital expenditures they cannot afford. Billions of shillings are locked up in unpaid contractor bills, effectively freezing liquidity and paralyzing small businesses in the rural economy. Second is the macro-micro disconnect. Instead of acting as complementary pieces of a national puzzle, our 47 counties often operate as isolated kingdoms. When a county government introduces aggressive local levies, market entry permits, and internal trade barriers, commonly known as cess, to maximize its own revenue, it directly sabotages national economic goals. We have created a fragmented market where it is sometimes more bureaucratically difficult to transport agricultural produce across 3 Kenyan counties than it is to export it to a neighboring country. To be completely fair, devolution has achieved milestones that a centralized government in Nairobi never could. For marginalized frontier counties like Mandera, Wajir, or Turkana, devolution brought the very first tarmac roads, functional hospitals, and banking halls in their history. It forced commercial banks and private capital to move outside of Nairobi and invest in the grassroots, driving financial inclusion to historic highs. Devolution did not fail to deliver development, rather, its structural design has made that development incredibly expensive to maintain. Section 4, the personal take, was Punguza Mzigo the answer? This brings us to a fundamental, systemic reality that we as citizens must candidly confront. Are 47 distinct county governments simply too many for a developing country to handle? Look at Nigeria. They expanded from 3 regions at independence to 36 individual states under the exact same promise of devolving development. Today, that hyper-fragmentation has left dozens of those states structurally bankrupt, with their local revenues completely swallowed up by the immense cost of running duplicate administrative offices. The lesson is clear: multiplying the number of governments does not multiply wealth, it multiplies inefficiency. Looking back at our constitutional journey, there is a strong argument to be made that Kenyans should have given deeper consideration to structural adjustments like the Punguza Mzigo Bill. The core philosophy of that initiative highlighted a critical macroeconomic truth: an over-inflated administrative structure dilutes economic efficiency. Managing 47 separate county treasuries, 47 separate planning units, and 47 separate civil services creates an immense bureaucratic burden. The cost of running the government machinery consumes the very resources that should be funding development. From an economic planning perspective, fewer subnational units would drastically streamline coordination. It is fundamentally easier for a central government to align industrial and agricultural policies across a lean, consolidated framework than it is to have 47 different local executives, all pulling in different directions. By over-fragmenting our geography, we didn't just devolve power, we devolved inefficiency. Section 5: The Remedies and Structural Reconciliation. So, how do we fix a decentralized system that is currently working against itself? Since rewriting the entire constitutional map overnight is highly unlikely, we must look at realistic, immediate structural remedies. First, the enforcement of regional economic blocks. If we cannot reduce the number of counties politically, we must force them to consolidate economically. Voluntary groups like the Lake Region Economic Bloc or the Jumuiya ya Counties ye Pwani must be legally formalized through an Act of Parliament. We must mandate that large-scale infrastructure, industrial zoning, and agricultural processing be planned at the block level, not the individual county level. This reduces duplication and aggregates economic scale. We can look to Colombia for inspiration. When their 32 localized departments realized they were too fragmented to build large-scale economies, they created RAPs, binding regional planning blocks. Individual regions stopped competing and started planning massive industrial corridors and agricultural export frameworks together. If Kenya legally empowers the Lake Region or coastal blocks to act as single economic zones, we instantly solve our scale problem. Second, legal consequences for non-CIDP spending. The Controller of Budget and the Auditor General must be legally empowered to automatically freeze the disbursement of development funds to any county that executes capital projects outside its verified, approved C.I.D.P. Planning must regain its teeth as the ultimate gatekeeper of public expenditure. Third, rationalization of inter-county taxes. Parliament must pass national legislation to standardize and cap inter-county trade levies. A single national business permit should allow a trader to move goods across all county borders without facing predatory double taxation. Devolved units must collect revenue by expanding local productivity, not by choking internal trade. Section 6, Outro. Devolution was meant to bring the economic blueprint closer to the people. But a blueprint is only as good as the discipline of the builders. If we continue to let localized political ambitions override structured economic planning, we will continue to tax a stagnant domestic market. We must rescue economic planning at the county level, just as we must rescue it at the national level. What is your take on this? Did Kenya make a mistake by creating 47 counties? And should we look back at concepts like the Punguza Mzigo Bill to streamline our economy? Let's have a data-driven, respectful conversation in the comments section below. If you haven't watched our first video on how the National Treasury swallowed economic planning, click the link on your screen right now to see how these two pieces fit together. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next breakdown.